Good morning, everybody. Today, we are going to be focusing on Copilot Studio and how it supports multi-agent design. So that means our agents are no longer confined to working in isolation, so they can actually collaborate with one another, orchestrate tasks, and scale in a different way that is more aligned with how teams operate. So over this slide deck, we're going to go over some different ways of implementing this. We're going to go over some live demos today of creating multi-agent systems and highlight some best practices and different things to watch out for. So while we have this session today, if as a follow-up to this, if you need or would like to go deeper with your own organization, you can definitely schedule time with us, just 30 minutes, and we'll be able to look at how Copilot Studio will work in your environment, how to maybe configure some agents that are relevant to your use cases. And the goal there is really to give you both a conceptual understanding and practical steps so you can take everything you've learned back to your organization. So after today, you'll have a follow-up opportunity to schedule that follow-up, and that link will be dropped in the chat today. So here's what we're going to cover today. We're going to start with an intro to multi-agent Copilot Studio. We will look at how to configure and manage these. We'll examine both the parent-child model and the agent-to-agent or peer agent model. I'll show you how they compare and where each makes sense. We'll walk through a live demo, creating these, and then we'll wrap up with some best practices, limitations, considerations, and any questions you might have today. So Copilot Studio has introduced three key capabilities for multi-agent design. So first, collaborative Copilot design agents can now collaborate with each other rather than operating in silos. So this increases our efficiency. Second, the parent-child hierarchy. So that's new. And a parent agent can delegate tasks to different child agents. And that creates a structured workflow that keeps your conversations more coherent. And third, we have our peer-to-peer or agent-to-agent, and those connected agents can work as equals, orchestrating across the domain to provide kind of a seamless user experience. So taken together, these form a modular team of our specialists, each focused on its own role as part of the bigger picture in your organization. So some of the benefits. So we are simplifying complexity, right? So once we split these responsibilities into multiple agents, now, instead of having this one massive Copilot that's hard to maintain, the canvas gets too large, we get all of these really large topics. We get smaller, easier to manage units. And this specialization of roles, it actually helps improve accuracy because each agent is optimized for one task. And then from a maintainability perspective, this actually improves because updates to one of your agents don't automatically update all the others. So a lot of times in Copilot Studio, you have some complex topics. You make a change to one topic that has an error, you can't go ahead and publish that update, and it can actually have a cascading effect against your other topics. And then scalability, that comes naturally now. So we can add new Copilots or new agents to expand capabilities, just like you're adding team members. So the end result is more of a coordinated system that grows and works just like a team of people. So some requirements to connect and publish these agents. So to connect these agents up in Copilot Studio, there are some requirements. First, the agents must be in the same environment. So if you have multiple Power Platform environments or multiple environments in Copilot Studio, they can't be across those different development environments. So this ensures stability, consistency, and security. Second, each agent has granular controls that say allow connections. So this prevents accidental linking and ensures intentional utilization of this agent-to-agent architecture. And third, you actually have the option to toggle off and on conversation history. So if history is passed, so we're talking to one agent and we take that conversation history, then we are sending that whole history over to the connected agent, and then that agent has all the prior context of that conversation. If we don't do that, the agent starts fresh. And there are use cases for that, which might be safer for isolated tasks. And then the management, again, is more flexible. We can enable, disable, or disconnect agents without deleting them. And so this way we can have staged rollouts, we can have testing, we can do different things and not impact the main agent functionality. So child agents. So a child agent is built inside of a parent. It ensures that the user experience as one coherent conversation with the parent agent always being in control. So the child agents are invisible to the users. They work behind the scenes and they simplify the experience. They can also be event triggered. So say, for example, after activating maybe an activity, invocation, or a workflow, priorities determine which child responds if multiple could handle the same event. So this makes child agents powerful for narrow, specialized functions where you really want hidden helpers doing work. And I'm going to show you some of the settings, limitations, different ways so that you can understand where we use the agents and where we use the child or sub agents today. So connected agents work a little bit differently. They're independent copilots that can be reused across the solution. And that individual agent is managing its own lifecycle, its own governance. It could have different departments pulling in things from that. And generative orchestration allows the parent to call one or more connected agents at runtime, merging all of those results into one cohesive answer. So the key is to give each connected agent a distinct domain. And today we're going to go over HR and IT so that we can show how orchestration happens across those different domains. And so how the agent can select the right domain without having to confuse the user. So this is peer collaboration. And different key differences. So we'll go through this in the interface as well as we build these out. Child agents depend on the parent for visibility, while connected agents operate as peers. Child agents are hidden from users. Connected agents may be visible in conversations depending on what we set up. Child agents are very lightweight. They're managed within the parent, whereas connected agents are actually individual agents that we can manage independently. And finally, that child agent uses triggers and priorities, while connected agents use, they're orchestrated dynamically based off the orchestration engine. So it really depends on which ones are going to depend on your needs, how much customization you need, and how much control you need. So if you need cross-solution collaboration, that's really where connected agents come into play. So we're going to spend most of our time today in an actual demo instead of in a PowerPoint deck. So we are going to go over now how to do these. So I'm going to stop sharing the deck and go ahead and share my screen here, just to make this easy for everybody. Just waiting for Teams. There we go. All right, so now you should be able to see my screen in Copilot Studio. So a couple of things that we had gone over today is that your agents need waiting for this to reload since I just closed that window. So we are going to start out with I'm calling this Viridian Policy Central. So this is my main entry point for people coming into the organization that are going to maybe start asking policy questions or access different systems across the organization. So in this scenario, when this finishes loading, we're going to go in and take a look at how this is set up. So again, this is the main entry point. As we wait for this to load ever so slowly today, you will see that there's no direct knowledge tied to this agent. This agent is set up purely as a router, or is going to be set up purely as a router, and I'm going to show you how we take care of this today. I'm actually going to turn off my camera for just a minute while I'm showing my screen, so this moves a little faster. I'll pop back on in a little bit. Let me refresh, and this should be much better. Copilot Studio is running a little slow today, so just bear with me here. So you can see here, it popped up with our test. It's going to give us our overview here in a second. It's going to show our instructions. And as those populate, then I'll be able to go ahead and we'll talk through different ways we can add new agents to this. So after we have published this, then we can start adding our agents. So here are my instructions telling it it's the entry point for employees seeking assistance and guidance on company policies. I have already created an HR agent that talks about all of our different HR policies and allows the user to submit a PTO request. And then I have an IT policies agent that covers our IT policies, password procedures, VPN backup, and allows the user to open a ServiceNow request. So by using this front-end agent, I can then connect these up. So when it understands when it's asked these questions, how it's going to transfer to these other agents. So we're going to start with the peer agents first. So once your agents are all created, I've already created an IT agent and a help HR agent that are both grounded in knowledge docs and have a couple of topics in place to guide user flows. So first, we're going to go ahead, and when you choose your agent, if you choose create an agent, we're going to do this next. This is our child agent. So from here, we can choose our Microsoft Fabric agent, which is now supported, or Copilot Studio. Today, we're going to choose Copilot Studio, and then I have a listing of all of my agents that have been published and are eligible to connect up. So I'm going to see if so we're going to start with our HR agent. Oh, I forgot to turn on generative AI for that agent. So we're going to stick with our IT agent first.
Question for you, Corey. Somebody said, I'm wondering the difference between this and creating an agent in M365. Is it the same?
No, it is definitely not the same as creating an agent in M365 Copilot. So while we have the agent builder in M365 Copilot, those agents are designed for end users to kind of use against their daily activities. I can share that agent with other people, but I can't pull that into all of the compliance and logging and say triggering Power Automate flows and external actions. Those are really good for knowledge against documents and answering questions about content. They give you kind of a chat GPT-like interface where you get real rich responses if you say expose it to a doc. Copilot Studio agents are going to give us the ability to augment that with external connectors, external tools, and external flows. So different use case, you can use them both, but different use case there where those are really going to be limited to the things you get in the agent builder, which do not allow for actions and triggers. I hope that answered your question while we're waiting to see if I turned on generative AI for either one of my agents today.
Another question said, thank you. So is this better for connecting apps to each other for communication? I've had issues with connecting internal apps in M365.
Yes, this is definitely better for connecting those different apps because I can create topics. So we can do this a couple of different ways. With some of our customers I've been working with, I've actually created an agent, say, for ServiceNow, an agent for ADP, all ADP interactions, or a different external system. And then I can connect all those up through one agent or through those different agents. Yeah, I didn't turn on generative AI for either one of these. Let me go fix that. The other aspect of that is then you also have access to your connectors as well, custom connectors. So there are a couple of different ways. I could hit those external systems through a specialized agent, or I can hit those externalized systems through a specialized topic within that agent. So I'm going to go back to my IT agent here and turn on orchestration because I did not do that. And by default on some of these, when you do create an agent, orchestration is disabled. So now that I've made that change, I do have to go ahead and publish this. And now I'm going to revisit the questions here just to make sure. Did that answer your question about connecting apps to each other for communication? Or did you have a follow-up to that while we wait for this publish? Okay.
I think he said it's all good.
Awesome. Then I'm going to try to go quickly take care of our HR agent as well and turn on generative orchestration or generative AI, excuse me, while that other one is publishing. There we go. So one thing to note, if you do make changes to any of these agents and they are connected, you do want to make sure, of course, you're also republishing these so that those agents pick up on changes. So if I have a master agent and it has 8 different agents associated with it, and I make extensive changes to one of my sub-agents, if I haven't published that sub-agent, the master agent isn't going to know about those changes. So just one thing to keep in mind. So we're going to go back now to our main agent while our IT agent finishes populating. Go back to Viridian Policy Central, go to agents. You see it's running much faster now. Go to Copilot Studio. And then we're going to go back and do a search and pull our HR agent. So here, this is really important. So when you connect an external agent, you have to give it some kind of description so it understands its role. And it's already done a pretty good job of pulling over what I already had in the agent description for the HR agent. It has some different examples, and it has a lot of my information there. And this is where I flag whether or not I want to pass my conversation history to the agent. In one instance where I don't use this, or in one instance where I've seen not using this, is where it understands I want to transfer over to an agent, but the context of the historical question might not make sense. Maybe we're directly calling an external application or an interaction to do something. It really depends on your workflow, whether or not you want to pass that through. So we're going to actually pass that over. And you're going to see here what happens after we add that agent. Now this agent out here is actually hooked into this HR documents folder, is the knowledge source. And then out here, you'll see that we have 40 different documents. And then I've also created a Copilot for Office 365 agent inside of here, which is only grounded to these. So to answer that question, this agent lets me talk to everything in this folder and gives me that ChatGPT-like experience, where this agent is still going to provide me information about the Viridian HR policies, but Copilot Studio is not as conversational sometimes. So it really depends on what your use case is as to how you want to go ahead and use that. So now we have our HR agent assigned. You can see it says connected. I'm going to go in here and I'm going to actually edit the connection. So there aren't a lot of details. You can see here it's enabled. All it says is available to Policy Central. And this is giving it its description. We can expand this to 1,000 characters. A lot of times I will point Copilot for Office 365. I'll give it some information about my agent and have Copilot write up an optimized description so I don't have to try to come up with one. So just different ways of using the AI tools you already have so you don't have to try to recreate the wheel. And now we're going to look at our HR agent, just so you can see the difference. Our HR agent is grounded in knowledge with our HR documents. If you go to agents, you can see it doesn't show that other agent is being added. I could add an agent here, but we're going to go ahead now and go back to our main agent and start a conversation once we also hook in our IT agent. So now we're going to add our IT agent to this as well. Again, passing conversation history. Now I'm going to publish Viridian Policy Central. Yeah, see another question while we're waiting for this to publish. We have end users that will only be able to access M365 if in Studio we create an agent to communicate with Calendar, for example. You mean, so your clarifying question. Your users have a Copilot Studio, a Microsoft Copilot Studio for Office 365 license, I'm sorry, Copilot license, or just a M365 seat? I'm assuming you mean an M365 seat. So you have two scenarios there. When we publish these agents out and say we put it on a SharePoint site, you will be billed. You can turn that on that way on a pay-as-you-go. And that would allow anybody in your organization to interact with anything created by Copilot Studio, regardless of the licensing that they have. So that way you get billed, again, per message. And the message is defined as a turn in conversation. So here, if I say, I have a question about the IT policies and procedures, that response, that little transaction, that would be considered one message. And your billing is set up on pay-as-you-go that way. Did that answer your question? I hope so. If not, drop it in the question. I'm going to continue, or in the chat. I'm going to continue. So we do have our HR agent connected and our IT agent connected. And I'm going to say I have here. And I'm actually going to turn on our activity map so you can see what goes on in the back end when we start asking questions and what this looks like to the user. Can I share my password with an employee that is locked out? So now we're going to be able to see that it did understand right away that this was the IT agent that it needed to go to. So from an end user perspective, I don't see, I'm inside the Veridian Policy Central agent. That's what I'm interacting with. And I'm saying sharing your password is prohibited, blah, 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 blah. Okay. I need to open a ticket to reset a password. So inside of my IT agent, I have a topic that is set up, and that is another topic that launches based on what the agent understands. So I'll show you that topic, but it's very basic. It's going to ask the title of my IT issue. It's going to ask for some information. This is very basic for today's demo. Description of the incident. And now if I had this connected to ServiceNow, I just gave a send to ServiceNow here. So we don't need to actually trigger that for today's demo. But this is showing that we were able to start with our Policy Central, understand, and bring it over and back over to the IT agent. So if we go back to that IT agent now, I can show you how that was done with topics. So I created an IT ticket topic, and the agent chooses how that topic gets launched. So this is where the description of this comes in play. So if I have descriptions for my topic and I leave them as the agent chooses, then when we're passing conversation history or passing intent between all of our agents, Copilot Studio is going to know which agent or which trigger is being sent, and therefore know which topic to eventually drop a user into. So we started out with our central agent. I said I wanted to open a ticket. It understood then from the main agent that the topic I need to be in was inside this topic that we're looking at here, create an IT ticket. So those topics, when you have your triggers, you want to use as many as you can to be triggered by the agent. And that way, when you're passing context history, if somebody were to, if I go back to my main agent and the very beginning of my conversation now, I need to open a help desk ticket. Now it's going to traverse our agents. It's going to, and it understands it's supposed to go to the IT topic based on the context. So it goes right to the topic, and the user doesn't even see that. The user is still in the Veridian Policy Central agent. So here we are. So another question, can you ask on a different language, even though the source files are in English? Would the agent be able to make the appropriate translations? So we can turn on different language packs for Copilot Studio agents. And it doesn't matter if the source is in another language, because what's going on in Copilot Studio side, when we add these knowledge sources, it's building up a semantic index of its own, which is similar to vector embeddings, like when you have a large LLM. So it is doing that for us on the fly, so we don't have to manage those embeddings. But an embedding, as it relates to AI, is a structure. It's called a vector, and that is a numerical representation that many characters long, 8,000 or longer, depending on how you're embedding information, where it understands context and intent. So while language is used in that, it still understands context and intent, so that when we are interfacing with a different language, it might not find the actual phrase that the user used because it's in a different language, but it can understand intent. Now, if there are highly technical documents or phrases that it can't handle, there are things that you can do in Copilot Studio to make it better at responding to different languages. But yes, out of the box, we can have some functionality for supporting different languages. understanding that source content and responding to the user. It'll respond to the user in their language, but it will not translate the document that's being presented as a reference into their language natively. So you would have to build that out through Power Automate. If you also want to provide a translated version of a policy document, you would have to build out a Power Automate flow and some advanced topics so that you're presenting the actual documentation in a language that the user is comfortable with. I hope that helps. So here I'm going to say how much PTO do I get per year on the HR agent. And if that didn't answer your question, or if you have a follow-up, Carlos, go ahead and drop that in chat, and I will come back to that. So now this made a mistake because I referenced PTO at the beginning, and I did this on purpose. So I have an agent that has a topic that says request PTO, and this is to start off with a PTO request. So when I get a question like this, how much PTO do I get per year? That means that this topic needs some refinement, so it only understands PTO request. It shouldn't be launching every time we see PTO. And we can actually then go and modify that to understand our intent better in our HR agent in order to handle that. See, this one by default said this tool can handle queries like these. So when I asked how much PTO do I have, it inferred that that was what I was talking about. So this tool, so we make that modification. I'm going to go ahead and publish that sub-agent. We're going to close this, then we'll go back to our main agent to show how that changes. I hope that other agent is already published. We'll find out. This one is a little stuck on PTO, and this is where, if you were doing this, you would have to refine one of these other topics. I didn't expect for this topic to be absolutely perfect. I really did want to show some of the limitations, though, that we do have when we're doing agent to agent. So we can make different things happen with our HR agent by changing our different topics to determine better how that happens. And one way we could have fixed this one here in our agents from Policy Central is to not pass the conversation history over and to show you what happens when we don't do that. And these limitations and some of these gotchas are listed out in the PowerPoint document as well, that you can take, that will be shared with everybody if you do want that. But it does go through some of these kind of scenarios and exactly what we're doing here to refine those. One other item I'm going to start working on, just because we're coming to the bottom of the hour, is while that I'm going to send one more question, and then I'm going to show you the difference in what happens when we use child agents instead of agent to agent. So here, how much PTO do I earn per year? Now it is searching knowledge first. And it's going to come up to my PTO policy. So that's an example of how we need to refine some of our topics, questions, intents, and some of the prompts that we're using throughout the agents to get it to understand our intent a little bit better so it doesn't trip us up by going to the wrong topic. So you can control that a little bit easier if everything is in one agent, but when you're using multiple agents, it takes more steps with topics, prompts, and intents to make sure that we're hitting the right destination. So now I'm going to go in here, and I'm actually going to go back to my main agent, excuse me. Now we're going to go into child agents and show how this is a little bit different. I am going to turn off the HR agent, and I'm going to turn off the IT agent. I'm going to go ahead and publish these quickly while we're making changes. So here I'm going to go ahead and do add an agent. And this one I'm going to do create, oh, it didn't publish. I published it too fast. So we're going to go ahead and just go through with our sub agent here. So this is our sub agent now. And we're going to create one for HR sub agent. When will this be used? And here we can define some different things here. So the agent is going to choose, again, similarly, we're defining context that understands HR. A certain message is received, a custom client event occurs, that could be a button, that could be a button, an adaptive card, or somewhere it's revoked. And we can actually, with a child agent, this is helpful, we can actually redirect. So in my, I'm going to discard this, in my parent, I can set up topics, and when you're going through Copilot Studio, based on a conversation, I can transfer to another topic, or I can send it over to another event. We're going to just let this one be the agent chooses. Go ahead and discard. We're going to leave that based on description. HR policies and procedures are documented within, ignore my spelling mistakes. And we do have some advanced where we can actually bring across variables, bring over identifiers, bring over different pieces of information if we know we want to use this. So there are some different ways we can actually do this. So one thing I think about is, what if I wanted to create a sub agent that was solely responsible for helping a user create a ServiceNow ticket? In some environments, we've done that as an agent, a side agent, actual agent to agent, or a peer agent. We can also do this here because we have tools that we have available. Now, we aren't building out topics in our sub agents, so all of our settings for this are here. And other ways this is helpful is if I have a very complex agent scenario, I can add sub agents instead of having to building out 10, 15, 20 topics and figuring out how to orchestrate between all of those. I can bring that down maybe to a few different agents that are child agents, and it's going to understand what it needs to bring those over. So if we're doing a lot of things where we're using external tools, here I have instructions I can give to this agent. And what's interesting to get into these multi-agent scenarios is you also have the ability to start using the slash key to actually start inserting different things in your instructions. So I'll always start the user with, and we can say a greeting. We could automatically transfer them over to a tool if I had one set up. You can see topics that are out of the box here, doing variables. Then of course we can start kicking off PowerFX flows. So we have a lot of controls we can add to give the agent more interaction and actually call out different agents, different sub agents, and different tools in our agent instructions. So every time you receive an HR request, call this tool. And those are different ways that we can do that. So I am going to provide some very general topics here. And I'm going to add knowledge. This is a separate knowledge source for this agent. And I'm going to go back over and I'm going to pull out this one I'm going to pull in my HR documents. HR document. Also, look at your descriptions. You have 1,000 characters. You can also use there as an AI prompt. While we're doing this, I just looked up and saw another question. I have seen companies working under ISO guidelines and where our wording does, that's why Copilot Studio really helps in those situations. because Copilot Studio doesn't generate the same kind of super verbose message we might get in something else, where with a Copilot, even Copilot Studio, or I'm sorry, Copilot for Office 365, I can ask it a question about a document and it's going to follow up with, would you like me to create a comparison for you? Would you like to learn more about this? It's going to infer a lot more content, whereas we want our Copilot Studio answers to be grounded in truth. We don't want to expose anything that's not inside of a document. So in our instructions with Copilot Studio, I always turn off web search and give very explicit instructions so that it is not using, you can even set it up so it's not using the general AI knowledge, and it's only exposing the knowledge of your documents so that it does pass those kind of strict guidelines. So I wrote a very short instructions. We have our knowledge. I'm going to go ahead and save this. And just show you on the front end here now. I'm going to go back to my agents. I'm going to show you what happened here. So on the main screen, you can see that HR documents has been added as knowledge to this master agent. Even though we didn't add it, by adding a sub-agent, now that knowledge source is being surfaced to our parent agent as well. You can see nothing changed with our topics. You can see here we have still have our custom and system. And when we look at our agents, the difference is now you see this as a child agent triggered by agent instead of, and I can't just click and go, I get delete. So if I want to go modify, I actually click it instead of right clicking and choosing something off that menu. So now when we go back to our HR questions, what is our policy on, boy, I can't think of an HR policy right now. What types of leave do we offer? Leave it very short. So you can see here, it went to the HR sub-agent, starting to look through knowledge sources as well. And this is a way of really segmenting, okay, this knowledge source, and you can see here, I have all of my different documents and policies that is referencing directly. It is taking quotes directly from my documents. So this is, and that says for more details, here, get with your HR department, or here's a telephone number. And then I can, of course, go ahead and read these different documents. Now, the difference in response, if I go over to my HR agent over here that was published directly over to Office 360, Copilot for Office 365, and I'm going to ask that same question, what types of leave do we offer? Just to show you the difference in response when we're using Copilot Studio versus Copilot for Office 365. And I think this goes, Audrey, it'll show something similar to kind of the question that you're asking as well. So you can see here that it is going a little slow, but it is running purely on the SharePoint side. This is not tied to Copilot Studio. So it is showing me information on my documents. And if you'd like help initiating a leave request or understanding eligibility, I'd be happy to assist. And this one just says for more details, go here. So this there are no instructions written for this agent right now. This agent that we're using over here, this is an Office Pilot for Office 365 agent that was created directly in SharePoint to show that you can have a conversation of documents here. It's going to be a little bit more verbose. If we give it different instructions, it does a really good job of expanding here. Inside of Copilot, it is very factual. It does not hallucinate. And it does give you these more direct correlations, which are really helpful in agent to agent or policies, procedures, things where we're not inferring context. So awesome. I'm glad that helped, Audrey. So you can see here that we went through and we have our sub-agent. And we could actually, from here now, create that special sub-agent that is only for interfacing with ServiceNow. I could create a sub-agent that is called every time a user wants to get a status on tickets. And this way I am segmenting out these different connections in different ways. So the difference is at the top level here, now that we have our connected agent, if I go to my instructions, you can see here at the bottom, I do have different abilities here as well within my, where I could tell it to go to specific topics based on an instruction that I'm giving it. And here is where I can say, if you hear this word, transfer to this agent. So if we want to get really, really granular and say, this agent is responsible for the agent in this domain only, we can now, and this has been turned on, just the slash command in some environments has been turned on the last week, where I could, even though I have a broad, maybe engineering topic, I can choose different items within that engineering topic that are, that maybe one is about our standard for, this is how we manufacture this widget. Widget A, widget B, widget C. So that way we can really narrow those conversations down to widget A, B, and C without creating all of these all these disconnected agents. So just one way there. So I think that covers most of what I can also show you. We'll add one more. We're coming up on time. But to add in another agent here, I'll discard my changes. Another child agent would be the same. To create an agent. And one thing to point out, if I create these agents, these child agents, that means this Viridian Policy Central cannot have an agent-to-agent connection with another agent. So we can only we can't connect this Viridian Central if I have child agents right now. And some of these limitations are changing. This is still preview. Some of the features, functions that I saw last week are different this week. So you'll have to keep an eye on that to see how those continue to evolve. But they are moving really quick. And these are really helpful to avoid having to create very complex topics where we're understanding intent, routing different things, and going through all of that. So now I'll go ahead and I'll bring you back to the PowerPoint just to make sure that I didn't miss anything today. And again, if you have any follow-ups, Amy just dropped that in our, I thought I shared that. Let's try that again.
Yeah, I've seen it. I see it. I see it there.
You do? I don't even see the slide deck. I see nothing. So I can't even tell what it's showing you right now.
You have it on the first slide.
Well, we're going to not share that anymore. Sorry, everybody that's on the call. I work with Copilot, not so much Teams. So
that's okay. Actually, if you've done that, if you want to, if anybody has any questions, they can drop them in the chat. We will be sharing these slide decks after today's presentations for anybody who's interested.
Well, here, I'm just going to go jump in this way and share my screen. And Perfect. It might be pretty, but I just want to make sure that we've covered everything today and can just show some of the other items. We'll go slideshow from current slide.
There we go.
All right, so we've talked about some of this is where we left off. So again, guidelines. Make sure you define clear roles. Make sure your descriptions are very strong, very unique, very precise. I recommend using Copilot or Copilot for Office 365 sometimes to help you draft those and help you refine those. Limit. Use child agents selectively to prevent conflict. So make sure that your child agents aren't overlapping. They are actually different domains so that we don't have conflicts where we see the same information in 3 different agents. How is it going to know which one to respond to? And it's going to pull the information from all of those potentially. Make sure you have fallback responses and things that happen for dead ends. So you did see, and that was one thing I did on purpose in our demo today. You saw that it said we create a ticket. it's a ServiceNow ticket sending happening here. We didn't have anything after the end of that to bring the user back to a conversation, to bring them over to a clean close. So when you're using these other agents, you do have to think about, am I ending the conversation? Do I have to transfer to another topic where we're having a clean handoff? Or am I bringing them back to my master agent somehow? Or, what does that look like? So just make sure that you've defined those. And risk limitation, redirect limited. So your redirect nodes cannot directly hand off to child agents. So you can't just go on a topic and say redirect to child. When you're using child agents, there is the risk that citations are going to disappear. I've seen that happen sporadically with agent to agent or agent to child, depending on if we're passing context or not. So just know that you might have to tweak instructions to make sure that you are explicitly requiring the agent to respond with a citation. If it's not, you can add a step in a topic for a general conversation flow where it actually does build out that citation list as a separate step to make sure you get it. Agents cannot be connected in multiple places, restricting complex multi-hop chaining. So you can't connect one agent in an agent-to-agent scenario. So now I can't connect 10 different agents to it. So we do have limits there. And again, as I brought up, this is preview status. So these features are in preview. There are changes. There were big announcements on other ways that Microsoft is enhancing the agent community. So it's moving very quick, and you have to be ready for change. So child agents for specific tasks, connected agents for collaboration, and you can combine those models for scalability depending on what you need. And then this makes your Copilot agents easier to maintain, easier to adapt and expand. So again, if I have a unified agent that is running for one line of business in my organization, I want to add on new features, new features, new features. That's not an entirely new agent now that I have to keep developing and adding on or bring this initial agent back to a QA level. I can leave the main agent alone and just bolt on new functionality. So I put together some resources as well for anybody if you want to dive deeper into this. There's some excellent resources here on how to use these multi-agent scenarios. We have video walkthroughs, some demos, and of course, some links to the official Microsoft documentation. So again, if you want to dive deeper with somebody from Concurrency, we'll definitely love to spend 30 minutes, jump in deep and show what these can do for your organization. And Amy did drop the booking link in the chat here. So with that, I'll go back and see. Anybody have any additional questions? If not, I know we're coming right up at time, so thank you for the time today. If there are no questions, I'll hang out here and wait though.
Thank you, Corey.
Thank you.
Let's see, we'll give it a minute here, and if no questions, we'll go ahead and end the session.
Absolutely.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us.
There, I'll even turn my camera back on, as I promised I would, now that I'm not doing anything on my screen. So thanks for your teams today for me, everybody. Much appreciated.
I don't see anything popping in there, so we'll go ahead and close this out. Thanks again, and have a good afternoon.
Thanks all.
Okay.